Last time I went down there. This time I'm going up the Ridgeway proper and I see what we can see. That is probably that Barrow. It's around Barrow Bronze Age. It's probably what the Anglo-Saxons called Colta Berche, which means Colta's Barrow. That it looks like certainly 1,000 years ago or longer, the people who lived here thought that somebody called Colta was buried there. So several times I've looked at the charter for this area, the charters. It's not very useful for Avebury, but it does skirt the edges, the edge of it. And one confusing thing is it talks about Hakenpenna, a location, and there is a Hackpen Hill today, about 5 miles that direction. What interested me the day before yesterday was looking at the Stukely's map of Avebury. You can see that in his day, the 1700s, the whole of this ridge was called Hackpen, which means, so the charter starts to make sense. So it's Hakenpenna. And what that possibly means is G.B. Grundy, Professor G.B. Grundy, says it's a hatch gate on a cattle pen. But pen is Welsh for hill. And Hacken is also hook. And it could mean, we do have some Welsh words in English, like coombe. There's coombe in Wales and there's coombe in England. Pen occasionally is used in this country, in England as well. So what it could mean is the hooks or the hook hill. So our friend Colta over here has got a beautiful view of the avenue, probably prime of place. Beautiful view of the avenue leading down to the village of Avebury in the stone circle. So whoever was buried there, Colta, we can't assume that the Anglo-Saxons weren't making up names. But whoever it is underneath that Barrow, whether they're called Colta or not, they must have been pretty important to be buried in over prime of place over Avebury. What's the relationship between the Ridgeway and Avebury? So this little series is about this little series is about Avebury. Let's get my English grammar right. And but I'm quoting Anglo-Saxon charters. Avebury is Neolithic and Bronze Age. Saxons come years later, millennia later, what am I doing? Well, I'm trying to get as far back as I can and show the landscape context of Avebury. How did people get to Avebury? Well, this road, the Ridgeway, goes from north of London all the way down to, way south. I can't remember, is it Salisbury? It goes, goes way down south, and it's a very, very old road. And to keep your feet dry in the winter, to avoid having problems crossing boundaries and all sorts, you would have headed up onto the hills like a motorway, go around, go between settlements, along the high roads, above the streams, which is what a ridgeway means, above the watershed, and that way. So it would have been no different for our ancestors, and we know they came from far away. I mean, there's a Bronze Age burial in the sanctuary. Well, they've done some clever science, and the child that was buried there didn't come from this area. So they came, and if you look at Stonehenge, you can see that the Avebury archer, he came from the middle of Europe. So there were, let's call them pilgrimages, it's a good word as any, probably describes in some sense what they're up to. They go to these places just as much, it's not all just, I'm not convinced, as I've said before, that faith moves mountains, but I think there are other motives, just as I'm sure faith was very high up there, but just look at Chaucer to see what other motives there are for going on long religious journeys. But yeah, fun, frolics, tourism, there's all of that as well. I'm sorry for being so cynical. My wife gave me telling off about it. There's another reason to be optimistic. It's not all, vile in ancient history. What we're looking at are ancient field boundaries, and they're human-sized, family-sized. You're not seeing the concentration of capital you might see in a later, impurer age. So those are Celtic fields or Romano-British fields, probably prehistoric. Those sarcens are naturally there, but I do wonder whether or not I've reinterpreted. I assumed the last time I came here, that little line of stones was just farmers moving their stones out of their fields to the edge of a boundary. But what's the point? Just look at them, they're everywhere. And why stand them upright? So I'm wondering whether or not I've misinterpreted that. Might be worth having a look. This is the Herepathe, and we've just left the Ridgeway, though it is a Ridgeway. There's some ambiguity in the charter. It may be a bit further on. The Ridgeway as set out in the charter, but anyway, that we're pretty sure that this is the Herepathe, also known as Green Street or Greenway. And Greenway, things called green paths called Greenway are interesting because they're green, because they're wide enough to leave grass verges. And when you're driving, so it'll be an animal driving path, taking your animals to market, and they can eat as they're on their way to the market on these greenways. But Herepathe is Hera means army, and Pathe means path, so it means the army path, the war path. That's so if you take Hereward the Wake, Hereward is the army, the ward is the warder, so the army warder. All those stones back there are lying down. Some of them are upright, but these are mostly upright and some of them are lying down, and these ones are in a line. What that means I couldn't tell you, but we could speculate. So I'm here. I made it to Avebury. I've got 10% left on the battery, so I can't do any more filming. I need to buy another spare. And so anyway, this is Avebury. It's one of the paths. The Herepathe is one of the ways people could have got down here from the Ridgeway. Obviously, it would have been far more impressive to come up the avenue from the sanctuary on the Ridgeway down the valley next to Overton Hill. But anyway, here is Avebury. So we've explored the south, and we've now explored the southeast quadrant of the landscape around Avebury. Ta-da for now.